Welcome to the deep dive. We love taking these incredible sources and really digging in to find the most profound insights for you.
Is what we do best.
So, have you ever stopped to think, how could a story, one told thousands of years ago, from a very specific time and culture, how could it possibly connect with, say, our modern understanding of the universe, like from science?
It sounds a bit out there, doesn't it? But it's a fascinating question.
Right. What if this ancient wisdom, the kind you find tucked away in, theological texts, actually echoes these core truths that you find across all the great spiritual traditions?
Well, that's exactly the territory we're exploring today. And,
Mm.
parables like the one we're focusing on, they're these sort of masterful little vessels for profound truth.
Hmm.
They take really complex spiritual, ethical ideas and distill them into these narratives that seem simple on the surface, but boy, do they resonate deeply.
Okay, so which parable are we talking about?
We're diving deep into the parable of the sheep and the goats. It's from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 31 to 40 specifically.
Right, Matthew 25.
And its central revelation, the real kicker, is this truly radical idea, this profound identification of the divine, of God, with the suffering, the overlooked, the marginalized people in the world.
Wow. Wow.
And that idea, that identification, it really bursts the banks of its original context.
Absolutely. So our mission for this deep dive, our journey today, is to show how this one story, well, yeah, it's deeply rooted in its Christian background, actually lays bare these principles that echo through the great wisdom traditions of the East. We're talking Hindu Vedanta, Buddhism, Taoism, and like you hinted, we'll even find these really striking metaphorical parallels, and we need to stress metaphorical
Crucial point, yes.
in the, well, frankly, startling discoveries of modern physics, specifically quantum field theory.
It's quite a map we've laid out.
It is. The overarching goal here is to try and illuminate this universal message, this deep, profound interconnectedness that, seems to bridge cultures, philosophies, even spanning across centuries.
It's a journey that might just reveal a surprising unity hidden beneath all these diverse ways of understanding the world. And it all kicks off with the story itself. The imagery is just so powerful.
Okay, let's dive into that. Let's unpack this scene. The parable opens with this incredibly vivid, almost cinematic depiction of what scholars call the eschatological climax of history.
That's a mouthful.
It is a bit, isn't it? But it basically means like the ultimate final moment, the culmination of everything. We see the Son of Man, which is this powerful messianic title for Jesus arriving in like full glory. Angels everywhere. He takes his seat on this magnificent heavenly throne.
It's a picture of just immense majesty and authority, isn't it?
Totally. And imagine the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Before him, it's not just a few people. It says all the nations of the world. Like every single person ever gathered for this final cosmic judgment.
Wow, all nations.
Yeah. And then the king, he starts to separate people into two groups. And the description is so simple, so earthy, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats.
That agricultural image, yeah, very direct.
Right. The sheep go on his right. That's the side of favor, of blessing. The goats, they're put on his left, which signifies, well, something quite different. It's this immediate visual sorting of destinies.
A clear line drawn.
And then the blessing that's given to those sheep on his right. It's just astounding. The king says, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world."
An inheritance, not just a reward, but something that was always yours. Prepared since the creation.
Yeah.
That's huge.
It implies this belonging that existed from the very beginning, doesn't
Yeah.
it? And then the king explains why they get this. He lists these very specific, very concrete actions. He says, "For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me."
It's a list of just basic human kindnesses, isn't it? Focused entirely on people in vulnerable situations.
Yeah.
Exactly. Tangible, everyday stuff. But here's where it gets really interesting, right? This is the pivotal moment.
This is the core, because the righteous, these sheep on the right, they aren't standing there beaming, feeling smug.
No, not at all.
They're genuinely perplexed. They're confused. They're thinking, wait, when did we ever do these things for you? Directly. They don't remember seeing the king himself hungry or thirsty or in prison.
Right. They ask him almost innocently, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we do this for you?"
And their confusion, it's not like they just forgot. It speaks to this profound spiritual humility, doesn't it? Their actions were so Uncalculated, so spontaneous, they didn't even register who they were supposedly serving in that moment.
That genuine bewilderment, that lack of self-awareness about the real significance of what they were doing, it just perfectly sets the stage for the absolute heart of this whole passage. You can almost feel the silence as everyone waits for the king's answer. Because this isn't just about, tallying up good deeds for a reward. This is a revelation. It's about to shift everything.
So what does he say?
Okay, so the king's reply. This is the statement that just unveils this stunning non-duality right at the center of the parable. He says with total clarity, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me."
Wow. You did for me.
Exactly. Not, it was like, you did it for me. It's you did it for me. This one sentence is, well, it's revolutionary. It's a statement of profound non-duality, meaning fundamentally not two.
Not two.
Right. It asserts that what looks separate, the king on the throne, the poor person in need, is actually at a much deeper level interconnected, or maybe even one.
Okay, unpack that a bit. The implications seem huge.
They really are. Think about it. You have this transcendent king, right? Majestic, glorious on a heavenly throne, and he's declaring that his identity, his very being, is inextricably bound up with the immanent, the suffering, the overlooked person right here on earth.
So serving the needy.
It isn't just a preliminary step like, do this, then you get to meet God. It is the act of meeting God. The divine isn't hiding somewhere distant. It's encountered directly, right there, in the vulnerability, the need of the least of these.
That's radical.
It totally is. And this foundational insight, this idea that the boundary between the one serving, the one being served, and the divine just collapses into this single unified act of love and recognition, this is the powerful thread we're now going to follow. We'll see how it weaves through other wisdom traditions and even incredibly into modern science.
That radical identification, I mean, the sheer audacity of saying serving someone needy is serving God.
Yeah.
It really does seem to echo almost uncannily with concepts from, say, the Hindu school of Advaita Vedanta. It's striking how similar the core idea feels, even coming from completely different worlds.
It's one of the most compelling parallels, honestly. Advaita Vedanta, which literally means something like the non-dual end of the Vedas, its central teaching is non-dualism. And this isn't just some abstract philosophy. It's presented as an experiential understanding that your individual self or soul, what they call Atman, isn't ultimately separate from the ultimate universal reality, the absolute consciousness. That's called Brahman.
So my deepest self is the same as the ultimate reality.
In essence, yes. Atman is Brahman. They are one and the same thing. Your individual consciousness is a manifestation of the universal consciousness. And this profound truth is captured in one of their most famous sayings, a Mahavakya, or great saying, Tat Tvam Asi.
Tat Tvam Asi. And that means?
It translates directly as that thou art. Or you could say, you are that being Brahman, the ultimate reality, and thou being you, the individual Atman.
That thou art. Wow. Okay, so if you take the King's statement in Matthew 25, whatever you did for one of the least of these did for me, it suddenly sounds less like just a moral rule and more like, well, like a practical, ethical expression of Tat Tvam Asi.
Exactly. It's like the Christian text is saying the same core thing, but using a story, a narrative parable, instead of a direct philosophical statement like Vedanta does.
So how does that mapping work exactly?
Well, think of it this way. The Christ figure, the Son of Man in the parable, he represents the divine reality, right? The equivalent, let's say, of Brahman.
Okay, the divine.
And the least of these, the hungry, the thirsty, the prisoner, they represent the individual soul, the Atman, but seen in its most vulnerable, often ignored manifestation.
Right, the individual in need.
So the parable, through its story, just beautifully shows how that distinction we normally make between the server, the served, and the divine, it just dissolves. It collapses. It breaks down the illusion of separation that, let's face it, we feel most of the time in our daily lives.
That feeling that I am separate from you,
Yeah.
and definitely separate from God or the universe.
Exactly that feeling. Vedanta calls that illusion Maya. Now, Maya doesn't mean reality isn't real. It means our ordinary perception of it veils its true unified nature. It's like seeing a rope in dim light and thinking it's a snake. The rope is real, but your perception is flawed, illusory.
Gotcha. The snake mistake.
Right. So when we serve that seemingly insignificant stranger, the person we might normally overlook, Vedanta would say we are, in that act, piercing the veil of Maya. We're actually serving the king, serving Brahman directly because at the most fundamental level of being, the stranger is the king. The stranger is Brahman, the stranger is you.
Whoa, that is an aha moment.
Isn't it? The righteous folks in the parable, with their selfless service, they were unknowingly living the truth of non-duality. They weren't doing it for a reward. They were acting from this place of fundamental unity. Without even realizing, they were seeing and serving the divine in everyone they helped.
And that's why they were so surprised.
Precisely. Their confusion, when did we see you? It highlights that their actions weren't driven by a dualistic calculation like, if I do this, I get that. It was just an intuitive recognition of oneness flowing out of them.
That's genuinely transformative. Okay, so from that profound non-duality in Hindu Vedanta, let's make a smooth shift, if we can, over to Buddhism, particularly maybe Mahayana Buddhism, which is often described as standing on these twin pillars of wisdom prajna and compassion karuna.
That's a perfect place to go next, because that list of actions in the parable, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, visiting the sick, I mean, those are absolutely quintessential acts of karuna, aren't they? Profound compassion in action.
Definitely seems like it.
They're fundamental to Buddhist ethics, and crucially, they arise directly from this core Buddhist understanding of interconnectedness. But, as you hinted, the connection goes way deeper than just, oh, both traditions think being kind is good. It's rooted much more deeply in Buddhist ontology, its understanding of self and reality.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Beyond just being, good things to do, how does that king statement, you did to me, resonate with core Buddhist ideas like anatta, no self, or maybe pratityasamutpada, dependent origination? It feels like there must be a stronger link than just ethics.
Oh, absolutely. You've hit on the key doctrines here. So anatta, often translated as no self, is absolutely central. Buddhism posits that there's no permanent, independent, separate self or soul that lasts forever unchanged.
No, fix me.
Exactly. What we perceive as I, this distinct individual that feels stable and separate. From the Buddhist perspective, it's actually just a temporary collection, an aggregation of constantly changing physical and mental components, thoughts, feelings, sensations, body parts. There's no unchanging core thing in there to grasp onto.
Okay, that's a big idea in itself.
It is. And realizing anatta, understanding this lack of a permanent, inherent self, naturally leads you to another foundational doctrine, pratityasamutpada, or dependent origination.
Dependent origination.
Right. This teaching basically says that everything arises in dependence upon other factors. Nothing exists in isolation. All phenomena, everything we experience, are part of this vast, intricate web of cause and effect. Everything is interconnected, interdependent, conditioned by everything else.
So nothing stands alone, everything leans on everything else.
You got it. And from that Buddhist perspective, the king's statement in Matthew 25, whatever you did for one of the least, you did for me, well, it becomes this incredibly profound expression of that very interconnectedness.
So.
Because the well-being of the king is shown to be literally inseparable from the well-being of the least of these. They aren't truly separate entities in this web. So when you act with kindness towards one person, it's not just an isolated event impacting only them. It's an action that ripples through, reverberates through, and actually heals or helps the entire web of existence.
Because the boundaries aren't real.
Exactly. Because that hard boundary of the self, the idea that I am totally separate from you, is seen as an illusion similar to Maya in Vedanta. Buddhism has its own understanding of this perceptual error. If that boundary is illusory, then the suffering of another person isn't truly other.
It's our suffering, too, in a way.
In a very real sense, yes. Because we're all part of the same interconnected flow. Their pain impacts the web, which includes us. The parable gives us this powerful story to illustrate it. The divine king literally feels the hunger and thirst of the poor as his own. Why? Because at that fundamental level of interconnected reality, there is no absolute separation between them. His identification is a reflection of that ultimate truth.
And this idea of interconnectedness, this feeling that my own liberation or well-being is somehow tied up with everyone else's, that sounds an awful lot like the bodhisattva ideal you hear about in Mahayana Buddhism. Is that how this plays out in practice?
That's the perfect practical embodiment, yes. The Bodhisattva in Mahayana Buddhism is conceived as an enlightened being, someone who has achieved profound wisdom, prajna, and boundless compassion, karuna. But instead of just, checking out into final nirvana, final liberation from suffering,
They stick around.
they deliberately choose to postpone their own final liberation and remain within the cycle of existence, precisely to help all other sentient beings achieve liberation first.
Wow. That's incredibly selfless.
It is. They embody this principle that their own awakening is intrinsically, fundamentally tied to the awakening of all. Their actions are a direct result of deeply understanding anatta, no self, and praticcasamutpada, interconnectedness. They don't act out of a sense of individual duty or for personal gain. They act from this profound awareness that all beings are linked.
So one person's suffering is everyone's suffering.
Exactly. And therefore, true liberation has to mean liberating everyone. The bodhisattva doesn't see a separation between themselves and those they are helping. Their service just flows naturally from understanding this fundamental unity. It makes the king's declaration in Matthew, "You did it to me," seem less like a metaphor and more like a description of what it actually means to live in full awareness of our shared reality.
That's incredibly insightful. Okay, so from the deep interconnectedness of Buddhism, let's try and make another transition, this time to the ancient philosophy of Taoism, which we often associate with the Tao Te Ching, and this central idea of the Tao itself, the way, the source, the sort of natural underlying pattern of everything.
That's a great way to frame it. And in Taoism, the ideal isn't necessarily about striving or achieving in the conventional sense, but about living in harmony with the Tao, aligning yourself with its natural, effortless flow.
Right, and that state of alignment, that's wu-wei, isn't it?
Exactly, Wu Wei. Now, it often gets translated kind of simplistically as effortless action or maybe non-striving, and that can be misleading. It's crucial to get that Wu Wei is not about being passive or just doing nothing.
It's not laziness.
Definitely not. It's more about spontaneous, intuitive action. Action that arises naturally without forcing things, without the ego getting involved with calculations and plans. And this is key, without being attached to a specific outcome or looking for an external reward.
So it's like going with the flow, but in an active way.
That's a good way to think about it. It's action that flows from being deeply in sync with the rhythm of reality itself. Like, water flowing downhill, it doesn't strain or struggle. It just naturally finds the path of least resistance.
Okay, so how does this idea of wu-wei, this effortless, uncalculated action, connect back to the people in Matthew 25, those sheep who fed the hungry? Their surprise seemed really important earlier.
It's absolutely central. What's so fascinating is that the righteous in Matthew's story are, you could argue, perfect examples of wu-wei in action.
How so?
Well, think about their defining characteristic, the thing that really shines a light on their virtue. It is their surprise. They are genuinely baffled when the king praises them for serving him. They didn't feed the hungry or visit the prisoner thinking, aha, this is how I serve the king and earn my reward.
Right. There was no calculation.
None at all. Their actions weren't part of some spiritual transaction. They just acted. They responded spontaneously out of a natural, uncalculated compassion when they saw suffering. There wasn't an internal debate, no weighing of should I or shouldn't I. Definitely no thought of what's in this for me spiritually.
So when they get the reward, they're confused
Because their actions weren't part of that kind of transactional spiritual game. They weren't trying to buy their way into the kingdom. They weren't even consciously aware of the divine presence in the people they were helping. They were simply living in harmony with the natural, loving flow of reality, which is the essence of the Tao, right? The Tao Te Ching says the Tao nourishes all things without contending. Their actions were spontaneous, born from an inner goodness, a natural alignment with the way, not from some external motivation or a deliberate attempt to rack up merit points. Their virtue was so deep, so effortless, it was just who they were, not something they did for recognition.
That makes their surprise make so much more sense.
Exactly. And there's another Taoist connection, too. The Tao Te Ching consistently lifts up the humble, the weak, the overlooked. Think about its imagery. It prefers the valley to the mountain peak. It praises water, which is soft and yielding for overcoming the hard rock. And it values the uncarved block. More than some ornate, artificially carved sculpture.
The uncarved block?
Yeah.
What does that represent?
Symbolizes simplicity, naturalness, wholeness. A state before artificial refinement or the ego gets its hands on it. It's something in its original, unspoiled, fundamental condition. So the king's radical identification in Matthew with the least of these, the poor, the sick, the prisoner, the marginalized, that feels profoundly Taoist too. The divine, the sacred, isn't found primarily in the high and mighty, the grand and powerful, or the outwardly impressive. It's found in the simple, the vulnerable, the broken, those who are closest to their natural, unadorned state.
Like the uncarved block of humanity.
Precisely. Untouched by worldly striving or pretense, and maybe because of that, they offer a more direct connection to the flow of the Tao, to fundamental reality.
This is genuinely mind-bending, seeing how these ancient traditions, separated by huge distances in geography and time, keep circling back to this incredibly similar core insight
Yeah.
about reality, about the divine, about interconnectedness.
Yeah.
It's really something.
It really is.
But now, for our final connection, and maybe the most surprising one, we're going to take a leap, a big leap, from ancient spiritual texts right to the cutting edge of modern science. And look, it is absolutely crucial. We are crystal clear here. We are exploring this as a powerful metaphor.
Yes. Emphasize metaphor.
We are not doing pseudoscience.
Yeah.
We're not saying mysticism and physics are the same thing or that one proves the other. That's not what this is about.
Agreed. Critical distinction.
Okay, but with that caveat firmly in place, quantum field theory, or QFT, offers this incredibly compelling modern metaphor for this ancient intuition of non-separation. It's uncanny.
It is uncanny. And QFT isn't just, some fringe theory. It is the fundamental theory of modern physics. It's our most accurate, most successful scientific framework for describing the universe at its deepest level.
And it forces us to rethink everything, right?
It really does. It completely shatters our classical common sense assumptions about how reality works. You're used to thinking about the world as being made of tiny, solid, separate little things like microscopic billiard balls bouncing off each other.
Which is how most of us probably think about it unconsciously.
Right.
QFT says, nope, that's not quite right.
So what's the QFT picture then, if not billiard balls? Okay, so in the old view, classical mechanics, you have discrete, separate particles. Each has its own fixed properties, clear boundaries. But QFT paints a radically different picture. It says the fundamental reality isn't particles, it's continuous, vibrating fields.
Fields.
Yeah, fields, like the electromagnetic field, for instance. These fields permeate all of space-time. They're everywhere, all the time, extending infinitely.
Okay, fields everywhere. So where do particles come from? Like an electron. I still picture that as a little ball.
Right, that's the intuition QFT challenges. What we perceive as a particle, say, that electron isn't a tiny, solid sphere in QFT. It's actually just a localized excitation, a little blip, a quantum, a vibration of the underlying electron field.
A ripple, like a ripple on water.
That's a fantastic analogy. Think of the field as a vast, calm ocean that's everywhere. A particle, like an electron, is like a ripple or a wave appearing on that ocean. The ripple isn't separate from the ocean. It is the ocean, just in a specific energetic state at that point.
Okay, I think I'm getting that. A ripple on the field.
And here is the crucial mind-expanding point for our metaphor. According to QFT, every single electron in the entire universe is an excitation or ripple of the exact same underlying electron field.
Wait, every electron?
Everywhere.
Every single one. They aren't truly individual separate electrons in the way we normally think. They are all interconnected manifestations of this one vast unified electron field. Same goes for photons. They're all ripples in the single photon field, quarks, ripples in the quark fields, and so on.
That implies a staggering level of interconnectedness just built into the physics.
At the absolute bedrock of physical reality, yeah.
Okay. So if we take that incredibly profound idea from QFT and we apply it metaphorically, again, stressing the metaphor.
Metaphorically, yes.
If we kind of imagine, just for a moment, a humanity field or maybe a consciousness field underlying all of us, then each individual person, you or me, we aren't these totally discrete, isolated entities. We're more like localized excitations, unique ripples, specific configurations of this single unifying field. Exactly. It completely flips the script from thinking about billions of separate individuals to seeing us as interconnected manifestations of some kind of shared reality, metaphorically speaking.
Well, okay, so connect that back to the parable for us. How does that QFT metaphor illuminate the king's words?
Well, if we run with this metaphor, then an action directed towards one of these excitations, say, giving that cup of water to a thirsty person, that action isn't just an isolated event happening to one separate, bounded individual over there. If they're an excitation of the underlying field, then your interaction is, in a sense, an interaction with the entire field.
Because you can't separate the ripple from the ocean.
Precisely. So in that metaphorical light, the king's statement, whatever you did for one of the least of these, you did for me, it stops being just a nice poetic idea or a moral rule. It becomes, metaphorically, almost a description of how reality itself might function at a deeper level, as hinted at by physics.
So an act of kindness.
From this perspective, metaphorically, it literally reverberates through that unified field of being. It affects all the other manifestations, all the other ripples, potentially including that which we might conceptually label divine within that field. The boundary we normally draw between you and me, between human and divine, between the individual person and the ultimate ground of being. It starts to look like a perceptual illusion.
A classical approximation.
Exactly. A classical approximation of a much more deeply interconnected reality that might, in some ways, resemble the quantum picture. In this unified field view, an act of harm or kindness doesn't just affect one point. It's a dynamic change within the field itself, influencing everything connected within it.
It's an incredible modern echo, isn't it, of those ancient insights about non-duality and interconnectedness we found in Vedanta, Buddhism, Taoism.
It really is. It offers a kind of scientific language, even if only metaphorically, for an intuition that humans seem to have had for millennia.
What an absolute extraordinary journey we've been on. We started with this ancient parable, deeply rooted in one specific theological tradition. We traveled through the profound concepts of Eastern philosophies, Vedanta, Buddhism, Taoism, and then, incredibly unexpectedly, we found these powerful conceptual resonances right at the forefront of modern physics.
It's pretty amazing when you line it all up.
So just to sort of recap the big picture, the parable of the sheep and the goats, while yes, it comes from a Judeo-Christian worldview, seems to carry this truth that's so fundamental, so basic, that it just resonates across cultures, across philosophies, even across the centuries, to find these echoes in our most advanced scientific models of reality.
It's a remarkable testament, isn't it, to the universality of certain deep truths about existence. And what I find fascinating is how the parable gives us this urgent ethical command, a call to act compassionately, but it builds that command directly on top of a profound ontological claim. A claim about the actual nature of reality.
Right. It's not just be nice because it's good. It's be nice because reality is interconnected.
Precisely. The divine isn't portrayed as some distant ruler you have to appease with complicated rituals or just believing the right things. Instead, the divine is the present reality, found directly, immediately, in the face of the other person. Especially, the parable emphasizes the suffering other.
And that's the thread we saw weave through everything.
Incredibly consistent.
Yeah, and we saw Hindu Vedanta naming this underlying reality, Brahman Atman, calling us to realize our unity with it through Tat Tvam Asi, you are that. Buddhism showed us the path through compassion, karuna, born from the wisdom of anatta, no self, and pratityasamutpada, universal interconnectedness.
The web of being.
Taoism demonstrated the beauty of Wu Wei, acting from that place of natural, spontaneous harmony, without ego or calculation, finding the sacred in the humble, uncarved block.
Effortless action, natural compassion.
And then, quantum field theory, we're careful to call it a metaphor in this context, gives us this stunning modern language to even conceive of a universe where separation might be fundamentally a perceptual illusion, and where everything is maybe like ripples on a single underlying ocean of being.
It really does pull all those threads together in a surprising way, suggesting these ancient insights aren't just abstract spiritual notions, but might actually be profound descriptions of how reality operates.
So what does this all boil down to? For you, for us listening right now in our everyday lives, it seems the story in Matthew 25 isn't just a Christian teaching. It's more like a timeless universal summons, an invitation.
An invitation to see differently.
Yeah, an invitation to recognize that when we serve the least of these, when we connect with someone in their vulnerability, we're not just doing a good deed. We might actually be, in a very real, very profound sense, touching the ultimate, connecting with the fundamental reality of existence itself. So here's the final thought to leave you with. How might this idea, this profound concept of deep, fundamental interconnectedness, the idea that the boundaries between you and me, between us and the divine, are maybe far more porous, far more fluid than we usually think. How might that shift your daily interactions? How might it change how you perceive strangers on the street, or even just how you understand your own place in this vast, deeply unified universe?
It's a powerful question to sit with.
It really is. What stands out to you from this deep dive? Something to ponder. We hope you enjoyed this journey, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.